Banks have launched a secret ad campaign to kill crypto, and Coinbase is their primary target. The Independent Community Bankers of America group is running aggressive ad campaigns, labeling Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong as public enemy number one on Wall Street. They are urging senators to side with banks and ban stablecoin yields entirely. But why this sudden aggression? Well, according to the bank's own data, stablecoins could drain $1.3 trillion from community bank deposits and reduce lending by $850 billion, which are pretty terrifying numbers. But is this actually true, or is it a desperate attempt to try and protect business models that rely on underpaying you for your savings? Today, we aim to find out. My name is Nick, and you're watching the Coin Bureau. First things first, let's talk about this ad campaign because it is nasty. Usually, bank lobbying is done quietly. It happens at steak dinners, in strip clubs, or on golf courses, and behind closed doors in Washington. But this time, the Independent Community Bankers of America, or ICBA, has gone scorched earth. They've latched onto a narrative that frames Brian Armstrong not as an innovator, but as a threat to the American economy. The ICBA represents the small banks, the local lenders, the guys who sponsor your little league team. But don't let the wholesome image fool you. This lot are fighting for their lives, and they have identified a specific enemy. Their campaign is targeting the Senate Banking Committee with a very simple strategy. If you let crypto companies pay yield on stablecoins, you are going to destroy community banking. And they have the numbers to back it up. According to a data analysis released by the ICBA in December 2025, allowing crypto intermediaries to pay interest or yield on stablecoins could reduce community bank lending by $850 billion.
Why?
Well, because they estimate it would trigger a $1.3 trillion reduction in deposits. Now, to put this into perspective, total community bank deposits sit at around $4.8 trillion. So they're claiming that stablecoins could wipe out more than a quarter of their entire deposit base. Yikes. The logic goes like this. If you move your money from a local bank to USDC to earn a 5% interest, that money leaves the community. It can't be lent out to a local bakery or used to fund a mortgage for your neighbor. Instead, it sits in a treasury bill backing a stablecoin, effectively funding the US government's debt rather than your local economy. It's a compelling argument.
But here's the thing.
It relies on the assumption that you, the consumer, owe the banks your deposits regardless of how poorly they treat you. And this brings us to the real reason banks are scared. It's not just about lending, it's about the spread. As of February 2026, the national average savings account yield in the United States is a measly 0.39%. Meanwhile, Coinbase offers up to 5% on USDC rewards for certain customers, and through their new on-chain lending integrations, yields can hit as high as 10.8%. That is a massive gap. Banks take your deposit, earn 5% from the Federal Reserve, pay you 0.4% and pocket the difference. Coinbase and other crypto platforms are essentially saying, hey, we will give you the 5%. And that is why Brian Armstrong is public enemy number one. He's given away the secret sauce. Now, Coinbase isn't just doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. Of course, stablecoin revenue is now a massive part of their operations. In the third quarter of 2025 alone, Coinbase earned $355 million from stablecoin revenue. Annualized, that is roughly $1.3 to $1.4 billion a year. And that is a serious chunk of change, and it effectively makes Coinbase a bank in everything but name. And the banks actually hate it. Now, if you've been following the channel for some time, you'll know that this isn't the first time that banks have tried to ban competition. In fact, this is almost an exact replay of the 1970s. Back then, banks had a monopoly on deposits thanks to something called Regulation Q, which capped the interest rates they could pay. When inflation spiked, consumers were losing money by keeping it in a bank. Sound familiar?
Sounds familiar.
Then came money market funds. They offered higher yields, and banks screamed that they would destroy the financial system. They lobbied to ban them. They said it would kill housing. They used the exact same public enemy rhetoric we are seeing today. But guess what? Innovation won. Regulation Q was repealed and consumers benefited. So the ICBA's campaign is essentially an attempt to bring back Regulation Q for the digital age. But this time, the stakes are higher because the legislation that would decide the battle is currently on life support. And this brings us to the Clarity Act. If you've been keeping up with the headlines, you'll know that the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act was meant to provide clear rules of the road for the crypto industry in the US. But in mid-January, everything fell apart. Coinbase, led by Brian Armstrong, pulled their support for the bill after the Senate Banking Committee, under pressure from the ICBA and other banking lobbies, inserted language that would effectively ban stablecoin yield. Armstrong tweeted that, quote, "No bill is better than a bad bill." Coinbase calculated that a ban on yield was an existential threat to their business model. Remember that $1 billion a year in revenue? Yeah, they aren't going to give that up without a fight. However, not everyone in crypto agreed with this tactic, and the upshot has been a massive split in the industry. On the one side, you have Coinbase standing alone, refusing to compromise. On the other side, you have heavyweights like A16Z and Ripple, who will still back the Clarity Act. Their perspective is that some regulation is better than none, and they can fix the yield issue later. But for Coinbase, yield isn't a side order of fries. It's the main course. And by the way, if you want to stay updated on this political drama without having to doom scroll on X, you should check out our free weekly newsletter. Our research team breaks down the biggest stories in crypto policy and market moves so you don't have to. It's completely free, and it's the best way to stay ahead of the curve. And you can sign up using the link in the description or by scanning this QR code on your screen. But back to the fight in Washington, where things have escalated quickly. The White House, realizing that crypto legislation was about to implode, called for an emergency meeting. The first meeting happened on the 2nd of February, and it was attended by the ICBA, the American Bankers Association, and crypto trade groups. By all accounts, it was a nothing burger. The banks thanked the administration for the, quote, constructive conversation, but gave zero ground. And then came the second meeting on the 10th of February. And this one was tense. According to reports, the banking lobby showed up with absolutely no intention to compromise. They held the line, ban yield or no deal. The crypto side, including Coinbase, Ripple, and the Blockchain Association, reportedly came ready to deal. They offered guardrails and consumer protections, but the banks weren't interested. And why would they be? They have the public enemy number one narrative running in the press, and they have the Senate Banking Committee terrified of what a supposed $1.3 trillion deposit drain could mean. And as if to spice things up even further, the White House has given both sides a deadline. They have until the end of February to reach a deal, literally days away. But why the rush? Well, it's because of the midterm elections in November. If this bill doesn't move now, it runs into a buzzsaw of election season. And if Republicans lose control of the Senate, or if the political winds shift, we could be looking at years before legislation resurfaces. We're talking 2027, maybe 2028, a lifetime in crypto. So, what happens if the banks win? Well, let's look at some possible scenarios. Scenario 1. The Clarity Act passes with the yield ban included. In this world, your 5% yield on USDC vanishes overnight. Coinbase and other platforms would be forced to stop offering rewards. You would be forced back into the 0.39% savings accounts, or you would have to move your funds offshore to risky, unregulated platforms just to beat inflation. Scenario 2, the bill dies entirely, and this leaves the US in a regulatory limbo. The SEC, which is admittedly much more pro-crypto these days, would still be largely responsible for overseeing the industry. If another Gary Gensler-like figure replaces the current chair, Paul Atkins, at any point, that could be bad news. Meanwhile, banks could continue to debank crypto companies, and the US would continue to lose ground to jurisdictions like Europe and the UAE, who have already figured this stuff out. Scenario 3, a compromise is reached. Maybe they cap the yield, and maybe they limit it to accredited investors. But given the bank's posture at the 10th of February meeting, this seems increasingly unlikely. And this brings us to the uncomfortable truth. The banks aren't trying to protect you, they're trying to protect their spread. They know that if you realize that you can hold a digital dollar, send it instantly anywhere in the world, and earn the risk-free rate on it, well, why on earth would you ever need a savings account again? It's the Blockbuster versus Netflix moment for banking, and Blockbuster is currently lobbying Congress to ban streaming. But before we get too carried away bashing the banks, we have to acknowledge one thing. That $1.3 trillion number? While it is the worst-case scenario, the logic isn't completely flawed. If everyone pulled their money out of community banks tomorrow, small business lending would dry up. That is a fact. And yes, community banks fund local construction, small businesses, and farms, while stablecoin issuers just buy US Treasury bills. So there is a legitimate macroeconomic question here. Do you want our capital funding the federal debt, or do you want it funding local businesses? But the answer shouldn't be to ban innovation. It should be for banks to compete, offer better rates, build better technology. Don't just run ads calling your competition public enemy number one. So then, what does all of this mean for the future of your money? Well, if the banks succeed in this campaign, it sets a very dangerous precedent. It says that in America, you aren't allowed to earn a fair return on your money if it threatens the profit margins of a politically connected industry. It says that the 0.39% you earn on your savings account is all you deserve. So the next few weeks are critical. If the end of February deadline passes without a deal, we are likely stuck in the mud until the 2026 midterms. The stakes then are very clear. If the banks win, users will never earn 5% on their digital dollars again. And that is a direct attack on your ability to earn a fair return. The status quo persists and ordinary savers lose out. Love crypto or loathe it, that doesn't sound like a win for anyone but the bankers, who will celebrate by spending the money that should by rights be going to you. Now, I want to hear from you guys. Do you believe the banks claim that stablecoins are a threat to the economy, or are they just scared of competition? And would you keep your money in a bank if you could safely earn 5% on a stablecoin? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to understand more about the specific mechanics of how stablecoins actually generate that yield, then you can check out our video on that right over here. That's all from me today. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. This is Nick, signing off.